All right, so let's define the terms emotion, expression, and message and how they relate to what we're doing here today. Emotion, that is your personal feeling and experience while performing a piece of music, which is coupled by the feeling and experience that the piece calls for. So with that said, if you're singing a sad song about lost love and dreary weather, you shouldn't sing it in a happy style unless you're trying to be ironic. So that's a more obvious example, that if it's a sad song, you should look sad while singing it. And the best way to express emotion is to allow it to come from a place of actual personal experience rather than observation. I find that the greatest performances, at least when it comes to emotion, come from a very raw and real place for the performer. They tap into something that actually happened to them to allow for the best performance possible, which is why it's so dangerous, because if you lose the mechanics of what you've learned so far from the rest of the house, that emotion can take you too far. So that's why it's so important to balance. But it is a necessary tool to have in your arsenal in order to get the best performance. Expression. That is the degree at which one expresses the emotion of the music. So, for example, if you have a quiet and haunting part, that is a low degree of, say, suspense or sadness even. And then it swells to a climax of emotional frustration and power. That's super amazing to witness the transition, as you can see. And here, that is very relative to dynamics. You're using emotion to pull the dynamics. So it's coming from a haunting, sad, chilly place to a very loud and heated place. And it sort of paints a sonic picture. And then the message, that's the combination of language, emotion, and expression. It's what the song and the performer are communicating. And the message is open to interpretation. The message can be that there is no message at all, or it can be a very concrete message, or it can be a very abstract message. It's an empty canvas, and you are the artist. And that's what's amazing about emotion and expression. That's what's amazing about this piece of the puzzle, is because this is where you get to experiment with how you perform and your uniqueness in doing such. So, now, next, let's talk about some of the primary emotions. Okay, primary emotions. Very much like primary colors. Primary colors, yellow, red, blue. You don't mix other colors in order to get these three primary colors in art. They are, red is red, yellow is yellow, and blue is blue. They mix together to make other colors like orange, green, purple, different shades and tints of that. So, given that, there's a way that I like to think about emotion. It's very similar to thinking about primary colors. Anger, red. Sadness, blue. Happiness, yellow. Now, you can mix those in different degrees and variations to get all kinds of emotions, like excitement. Maybe you add a little bit of white in there. Or bitterness, which is a darker shade of blue and red, and maybe a grayish color. And happiness, yellow. Maybe it's like just enthusiasm. Or determination, which is like a bright orange, which mixes a little bit of anger with happiness. Just a tad of anger with the happiness to give you just a little bit of perseverance. So, if that makes sense. That's a really good model to use to figure out how you want to paint the sound of your performance. This can transition from phrase to phrase, from line to line, from stanza to stanza, from song to song, if you're creating an album. A song could be just one solid color. Say if it's like death metal, it could be just like black and red, and that's it. Or it could be very nuanced, like a classical piece. So that's how you can relate emotion primary emotion to primary color and vice versa. And hopefully that gives you a clearer understanding of how to paint your sonic picture. Now, with that said, you might be wondering where the emotion happens. How do I express the emotion to my audience without sacrificing technique? Well, I'm going to demonstrate. Okay. I'm going to cover my mouth. Can you tell what I'm feeling right now? 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 So, I went through happiness, sadness, which people think I look confused when I'm sad, which is hilarious, anger, and back to happiness. But I did not move my mouth. My mouth stayed in the same general shape. It is not dependent on the vowel shape. When people cry, you know, you see illustrations of people being sad, and they're like, "Moo." That rarely happens when you cry. This is what usually happens when you cry. The lips are up, you're showing the teeth. So when you sing, especially if you're singing high notes and you're singing like a sad phrase, you can still express that sadness with this exposed, or happiness, or anger. Hopefully that makes sense.